Hello, my name is Gabriela Cervantes. The article in which I am reviewing today is from the Journal of Sexuality Research and Social Policy. The title is Navigating Community Institutions, Black Transgender Women's Experiences in Schools, the Criminal Justice System, and Churches. So the research questions question that is being asked in the article is basically, what are the experiences that Black trans women have in community institutions? So the institutions can be the ones that I listed in the title, so the schools, the criminal justice system, churches, the broader society, which is, everyday life, and the trans community or the LGBTQ community. Something that was on page 277 of the article that kind of explains the research question is, I will read off. Data were used to generate an explanation of how and why themes and relationships between young Black transgender women and societal structures have manifested and have related to VDH. VDH stands for violence, discrimination, and harassment. So we kind of want to see if schools, churches, the criminal justice system, etc., either provide support or do the opposite to Black trans women. This is important to study because we often see and hear about cases of LGBTQ youth and adults facing some sort of sexual, physical, and verbal harassment, whether it be in the workplace, in the criminal justice system, school, place of worship, health institutions, the military, just kind of any institution, basically. There's also often a lack of intervention for Black trans youth, especially in predominantly Black schools or neighborhoods. Not only being transgender, they are, transgender and a minority, which kind of just adds to that disparity. There also needs to be some sort of policy change, especially with, the laws that are kind of being passed today and the rhetoric that our Congress and, the people in the White House kind of view transgendered women and men. We need to have these sort of policy changes to protect and educate about, what is affecting trans women, trans youth, trans men, or people in the LGBTQ. Lastly, there needs to be more research conducted on, trans women, trans men, trans youth, the rates of, being homeless or how often they are being discriminated against, or especially in a criminal justice setting by authoritative figures. And basically, overall, getting qualitative and quantitative data around trans people. So what the researcher had found was that school was a strong institution for social enforcement, meaning that Black trans youth were discriminated against for being themselves. Sometimes they would wear a skirt to school and kind of just express themselves, and they were either sent home or, they just kind of face the repercussions from being trans or kind of coming out as gay or dressing femininely. So because of this, some of the consequences were that they would drop out, or they would kind of just build themselves up and let people know, like, I'm not going to take any of this. And it would kind of just make them intolerant to those kinds of disrespectful attitudes. Secondly, the criminal justice system. Police did not consider crimes against trans women serious, especially if they were engaging in sex work. So often there was a lack of trust or reluctant to report some sort of, crime that happened to them because police officers would often not do anything. And that led to distrust. The third finding was that churches usually preached homophobic and transphobic rhetoric, which in turned trans women to change their churches or hide who they really were. So they weren't able to dress like women, or they weren't able to, really be themselves. The next finding was in the broader society institutions, so basically in their everyday lives. So they were often discriminated against. There was employment barriers, so they were not able to basically pass off as a woman, thus leading to sex work. So a limitation on the research was that when trying to obtain information on sex work performed by Black trans women, they became suspicious of the interviewee, thinking that they were part of law enforcement, thus kind of opting out of sharing experiences of their sex work. The most interesting thing that I learned about this article was the harassment that occurred during school hours. Teachers would sometimes send trans students home because of what they were wearing, or they would kind of feed into that, stigma of, kind of them being trans. And often, I guess, in the article it kind of said that they would send them home so that they wouldn't get bullied or something, but I just kind of think that there should have been more safe spaces and safe havens for trans youth, especially in an educational setting where, they shouldn't have to be sent home for wearing a skirt or wearing a dress or being who they are. And something else that I had found interesting was that they kind of established themselves to be someone who would not take any threats or violence for the sake of their safety. So it kind of, just made me feel a little bit happy reading some of the interviews that some of the trans women stated, that they would protect themselves